What if everything you thought you knew about the Beatles, the clean-cut lads from Liverpool, was only half the story? Behind the polished suits and chart-topping hits was a band shaped by rebellion, rivalry, and radical choices. And now, Paul McCartney is finally opening up about the parts of their journey that fans never saw, and some they were never supposed to. We all remember the Beatles as the charming British invasion that swept America off its feet. But before the fame, they were far from polished. In the early days, it wasn't suits and harmonies. It was leather jackets, cigarette smoke, and rowdy nightclub sets. They'd play for hours, eating fried chicken between songs, swearing on stage, barely making rent. That raw edge, it was real. Enter Brian Epstein, the man who saw through the chaos to something bigger. He cleaned them up, dressed them up, and sold the world a new version of the Beatles. And it worked. But behind that image, the band still bristled with the instincts of rule breakers, especially when they met Bob Dylan in 1964. Dylan thought their lyrics hinted at drug use. They weren't. But he took it as his cue to introduce them to marijuana. What followed was a haze of laughter, slurred notes, and the beginning of a new era for the Beatles, one where experimentation was no longer just musical. Then there's the Lennon-McCartney songwriting myth. Most fans assume they wrote everything together, but the truth is more complicated. Early on, they agreed to share credit on all their songs, no matter who actually wrote them. Over time, that caused friction, especially when McCartney penned hits like Yesterday completely on his own. He's admitted that it still stings to see Lennon's name next to songs he created alone. But the Beatles weren't just navigating fame and friendship. They were confronting serious social realities. In 1964, at a concert in Jacksonville, Florida, they discovered the audience would be segregated. Black fans on one side, white on the other. They refused to play. And then came the quote that nearly destroyed everything. In 1966, John Lennon said something few rock stars would dare. "We're more popular than Jesus." In the UK, it barely made waves. But when it was republished in America, the outrage exploded. Records were burned, threats were made, Southern preachers called for boycotts. At a concert, a cherry bomb was mistaken for gunfire. That moment, it changed everything. The Beatles stopped touring for good, and it would later haunt Lennon in ways no one predicted, especially when his killer, Mark David Chapman, later claimed the comment helped fuel his hatred. But controversy didn't stop there. The Beatles originally planned to release Yesterday and Today with a shocking album cover, posing with butchered doll parts in a symbolic protest against the Vietnam War. It was quickly pulled and replaced. But a few copies made it out, and today, they're collector's gold. Then there's the blame game. For decades, Yoko Ono was painted as the villain, the woman who broke up the Beatles. But Paul McCartney has since dismissed that theory. He said plainly, "She certainly didn't break up the group." The truth? Lennon and McCartney were already drifting apart. Creative tension had been growing for years. Yoko was a catalyst, not a cause. Even the Beatles' infamous first LSD trip wasn't what you'd expect. No rock star party, no wild tour story. It was a dinner party with a dentist who slipped acid into their coffee. John and George spent the rest of the night hallucinating. John mistook traffic lights for fire. George thought his home had become a submarine. Just another bizarre chapter in their ever-expanding psychedelic spiral. And when it comes to reunions, we were this close. In 1976, Saturday Night Live jokingly offered the Beatles $3,000 to reunite on air. That same night, John and Paul were actually watching TV together in New York. They talked about going, just for the laugh. But they were too tired. One of music's greatest what-ifs was lost to a lazy Saturday night. Years later, during Lennon's so-called lost weekend in the mid-70s, a wild, drug-fueled period away from Yoko, he and McCartney crossed paths again in a Burbank studio. It was unplanned, unscripted, and quietly emotional. Just two friends, once the most famous songwriting duo in the world, bumping into each other in the middle of the chaos. The Beatles gave us innovation, revolution, and some of the greatest music ever written. But behind the scenes, they were navigating fame, fear, drugs, creative wars, and growing pains that no band had ever faced before. Their story isn't just one of success, it's one of survival. So next time you hear Let It Be or A Day in the Life, remember, this was more than music. It was a tightrope walk between brilliance and breakdown, and every step left a mark that still echoes through the world today.